Hello everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in to Soul GPS, where we learn to find our intuition and our inner guidance to lead us to the best life we can create. So today I wanted to explore the topic of tying self-worth to achievement. And it's something that I have certainly struggled with a lot, and I know a lot of people who have as well. I come from a place that's pretty famous in the world these days called Silicon Valley. And that place, let me tell you, is just full of high achievers. It's full of people who are constantly outdoing themselves, outcompeting themselves, competing with one another. And I believe that the root cause for a lot of that is the desire to really prove their worth. This, unfortunately, if left unaddressed, can lead to exploitation and manipulation. And here's why. So I believe that tying self-worth to whatever you achieve stems from childhood programming that tends to happen very, very early on. And what happens is our parents or caretakers tend to make us believe that unless we do something that they approve of, such as get a good grade or behave in a certain way or do this versus that or not go there or, do as mommy or daddy says, we are good and lovable, versus when we don't do something, we are not. That later compounds when we enter school with, of course, grades and things like winning contests and so on. Whereas when we don't achieve as well, worse. When, for instance, one of the siblings does better than the other and they get compared, then right away, immediately, there is this association with, unless I do something, I am not going to be rewarded, I'm not going to get the love. This is absolutely devastating to a child, especially to a young child that's still developing. And John Bradshaw, a fantastic psychologist and author of many books, has written this book called Homecoming, and it actually also has a YouTube program of 10 steps, 10 videos. I highly recommend you check it out. So in it, he walks us through stages of development of a child, starting with what he calls the codependent stage, where a baby, a newborn, an infant, is basically 100% fully dependent on the care of their parents. So the child cannot do anything, and the only way they can communicate is through crying, through emotions. Once that stage wraps up at around 9 months, and it continues on until about, I believe, 2 years or 3 years old, what occurs is this whole new stage where the child begins to explore their surroundings as a toddler and begins to, of course, get into places where they're not supposed to get into, such as, sticking a hand in the pot of soil and then putting it in their mouth, and parents says, no, don't do this, you can get sick, or, putting their fingers inside of power plugs and things like that. So what's really important during that stage is for the parent to let the child know, to somehow convey that even though they're making mistakes and doing things they're not supposed to, they can still return back to the child, to the parent, and be loved. It's really, really key, because if that isn't established, then the child later on, as he or she grows up, are always going to have a fear of exploration, fear of trying new things, and they're also going to be absolutely terrified of making mistakes, which will lead them to become a perfectionist. Something I think I should make another video on, because that in and of itself is a subject that really deserves diving in. So what happens to that child? Well, that child ends up growing up feeling like unless they do the thing that they're supposed to do, the right thing, they're not valued anything. And this begins with, little roots that are being basically grown into the brain and then burned into the nervous system of a child, and then later on can become a whole, big convoluted plant that is going to eat away at the self-esteem of a person. Unfortunately, this is not seen, so it's very difficult to see it and treat it. It just kind of sneaks in to your life, And ways in which it can manifest, I believe, is through one, perfectionism, another way is through workaholism. And I've seen, again, a lot of that working in the technology sector in Silicon Valley, of how people would just absolutely give up their free time, give up their, the personal self-care. They would give up dinners with their loved ones in order to make it to the next sprint, or in order to get this product done, or to satisfy the boss, which is what leads me to exploitation and manipulation, because I believe that people who tie their self-worth with achievement are really prime targets for sociopaths, for psychopaths, for narcissists, because we are also the enablers oftentimes. And so what happens is, when we meet one of those people and then they immediately sort of hone in on the fact that our self-love is tied to what we do, not to who we are, then at first they'll be like, oh my gosh, you're doing so great, you're so amazing, thank you for doing this for me, you're the best, you're the star. And then they do that a few times, and we can get really hooked on feeling like, wow, we feel very valued. It ties in with that childhood wound that was left, unsolved by the parents, where the parents didn't necessarily make the child feel loved just because they made the child feel loved because of what they did. So again, this can happen in the workplace. This can happen definitely in relationships. I'm speaking from experience here. Many times over, it's been that, I would end up running a company for my boyfriend, or, running around and doing all sorts of things. And they would be super grateful at first and just like, wow, you're so amazing. Thank you for doing this for me, da 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 da. And I would leave the things that I needed to get done for myself undone for days sometimes, because I would want to drop everything and go and help someone else. And so that went on and on and on and on until I literally had nothing left to give to them or to myself, and I just collapsed. What's worse is that oftentimes this stage of being what's called love bombing in the narcissistic lingo, this idealization of a person tends to get followed by a stage of devaluation, which is the opposite. But I think there's almost like an intermediate stage where you feel like you're just expected to perform. You're expected to do these things that they used to really be grateful for. Now they're taking for granted. And you're now looking for that appreciation to come back, and that keeps you hooked in the cycle, which is very toxic and very dangerous. So workplace, relationships, tying your self-worth to what you do instead of to who you are can have really negative consequences. Usually it comes from a child just basically needing validation. Initially, when they do something terrible, they want to feel that they're still okay, they're still going to be loved, or something not necessarily terrible, but something, that they were not supposed to do. So they just want to know that they're okay. It's fine. Everybody makes mistakes. Don't worry about it. Let's continue on. Let's continue on the journey together in love, and we're fine. Everybody's good, and also for the child to have the ability to feel safe in order to come to the parent and communicate that, be able to communicate that something's wrong. And that's okay. It's okay when things are wrong. See, I know a lot of people, and I myself have been there, where I felt like whenever things were good, it was easy to just come and say, Mom or Dad, I did this, I won the contest, blah, blah, blah. And everybody was, of course, happy. But whenever I did something bad, I would always hide. I would go to my room, lock my doors, cry sometimes, and I would feel like I'm not loved, and I don't deserve love anymore because I'm such a bad kid. And that got internalized over the years, over and over and over again, and then it ends up having really negative repercussions. So how do we deal with this? How can we, start to say no? Of course, first thing comes to mind is boundaries, and learning to say no when people are asking us to do things we don't really want to do. So I think that is the first step. It's really important to know where your limits are and not be afraid to vocalize it. Step number 2, and it's kind of like all in the same level, it is what I call the self-CLC, which is self-compassion, self-love, and self-care. And compassion is just feeling like, I am just like everyone else. None of us are perfect. I am one of a million. And why am I expecting myself to be different? Why am I putting so much expectation on myself? To be compassionate with that. And that also means being able to hold all these different, sometimes conflicting emotions inside of us and not letting those override us and make us feel worse than we already are. It's okay what we're feeling because we've been mistreated. So it goes without saying that now those emotions all want to rise up and show themselves. So all we need to do is be there with them, be the parent that we wish we had, and hold those feelings of sadness, confusion, anger, whatever they are, and treat ourselves kindly. Self-love is just being unconditional about how we are with ourselves, allowing ourselves to make mistakes, allowing ourselves to just be whoever we are, and constantly showering ourselves with the love that we know we deserve, as that every being deserves, just by the virtue that we are alive. And that's another, I think, area in which a lot of people who struggle with this self-worth issue feel like, they only have the right to be here on this planet if they act a certain way or if they do certain things. I've been there, and it's a horrible thing to live with. It sits on your shoulders. You constantly feel like you need to keep proving yourself, or you need to hide, like you don't have the right to even be here. That's how narcissistic abuse, that's the mark it leaves, and it's really heavy. It's a lot of weight to bear. And finally, self-care, it's taking action and doing things for yourself that are nurturing, such as going on walks when you feel like it, curling up with a cup of tea, watching a movie, going to get a massage, splurging on something that is just for you, just to make you feel better, taking care of yourself with respect to getting enough sunlight if that's feasible, eating a good diet, getting movement, breathing deeply, reading the kinds of things that really interest you, and again, saying no to things that don't interest you, saying no to things that sap your energy. And also, I would say part of self-care, at least for me, is visioning my future. Because when I look back to the past and I see so much abuse, I see so much injustice, it's sometimes really difficult to integrate all of that in the present moment and look into the future and see it all as, rainbows and sunshine. It does take some work. It does take some work to really sit with it and to give yourself the space to really imagine, and the permission to really imagine that life could be different. And then go back to that childhood, especially as you do your inner child work, to reconnect with the dreams and visions we had as children. They may not be the same anymore. We have grown, we have acquired new experiences. Maybe we're limited in some capacity, but also maybe in another capacity we're more expanded because now we have skills, now we have tools that we didn't have before. So allow yourself the space for the dreams to come, some daydreaming time. To me, that's also part of self-care. Anyway, I hope that this video was valuable to you. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. I know this is a pretty much brand new channel and I'm just getting started, but I have a lot to share because I've been through a lot, and I really do not wish upon anyone who has been to go through what I have been through in many cases. And I will share parts of my story throughout this sharing here, throughout this channel, but also, I know what it feels like when you're going through it and you feel so isolated and so alone. You just feel like you're the only one who's really suffering, but you're not. And I don't mean it in a sense that you should feel bad, like, hey, you're not the only one, so don't feel so bad. No, it's that there are other people who have been through it and they made it to the other side, and it's bright out there, and it's possible to heal from this. These are just old programs that have been put in our head, and once we can change them, once we can rewire our brain through neuroplasticity, we will be able to switch our perception and the things that come into our life through a variety of channels. So I wish you a wonderful day or evening, depending on when you're watching this, and I hope to connect with you again in another video. Thank you so much. All the best to you. Blessings.